Hey everyone, my name is Moiz. I'll be facilitating today's candidate interview. We have Dr. Flojaune Cofer, who's running for mayor of Sacramento. Um, and so a few quick logistical, I guess, agenda for tonight. We're going to start with a brief introduction, and I'll pass it over to you so in a second. About 3 to 5 minutes of just whatever you want to say, and also ask to clarify what position you're running for and what the jurisdiction is. And then from there, we'll transition to Q&A. So with that, I will pass it fully to you.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Flojaune Cofer, and I am running for mayor of Sacramento. And I am really just pleased to be here with you this evening, Sunrise Movement members, because this is a people-powered campaign, and I am excited about the possibilities of what we can build together. You know, this campaign is really born out of the true vision that more is possible. We are the fourth largest economy in the world. And often we compare ourselves to the other states, but the truth of the matter is that California really should be compared to other countries because of our size and because of the massive resources that we have at our disposal. And when we don't rest on our laurels and only compare ourselves, to other states, and we actually compare ourselves to other countries of similar size, what we see is that we're falling behind in so many ways. And we don't need to even look at the data to be able to know that because we feel it every day. The number of people I talk to who are feeling frustrated and afraid because they might be one emergency, one healthcare scare away from losing their, human right to housing. Because we don't protect it as a human right. The number of people here who are worried that they don't have a future in this region and are going to have to go somewhere else to be able to support themselves. And so I'm running for mayor as a public health professional because I understand deep in my bones that what we do, what our governments do on a regular basis is a matter of life and death. And I came by that in one of the hardest of ways. When I was 11, my dad passed away from heart disease. And I look back on his life and recognize all of the ways that policies didn't exist to protect him. He started smoking at a time before the tobacco industry was honest about the immense harms that it caused to our physical health. And also, at a time where they heavily marketed in Black communities. And so my dad became addicted at a time where he didn't even know that what he was doing was a problem. And, he died at 47, and that denied him and me our time together. But at the same time, I also benefited from some of the best of what policies had to offer. In the aftermath of that, grave tragedy in my 11-year-old life, I was offered individual and group grief counseling at my public school because of policies that existed to be able to support and protect me. And my mom, as a public school employee, was able to continue her ability to afford our home because of policies that allowed that to happen. And so I recognize also that we don't want, obviously, children to lose their parents prematurely. And also that policy helps to intervene even when something really awful happens. And so for me, it is a matter of life and death. And that's part of the reason why I got into public health, was because I was searching for a way that we could really address the preventable causes of, premature death and disease. Public health really focuses on two things: how long you live, and during those times, I like to say how good you live, right? And so, what the quality of our life looks like while we're here. And we're trying to maximize both of those things, the time as well as the quality. And that is the role of our city. And so we need to be addressing the pressing issues in our community, like housing and homelessness, by providing safe ground for people to be able to go to, by stabilizing the cost so that we don't have people entering our streets every day, through evictions and through lack of affordability, where we're continuing to build affordable housing at all levels. We need to be addressing this crisis, and we need to make sure that people are earning enough money to be able to meet the cost of living in our region. Otherwise, no matter what we call it, it's not a livable wage. And we also need to be addressing our climate goals because we recognize that we have one planet and that we have not been good stewards of our resources. And we need to implement our climate action plan and need to dedicate resources toward it. And one of the best ways to be able to do that is to be able to feed two birds with one feeder by making Sacramento a green jobs hub. We have great schools and universities, and community colleges right here in this community, and other, great labor support in our unions. And we could really address our climate goals while also boosting our workforce and really supporting the people who live here, and being really a treasure to the entire world, because we're all in this climate change, crisis together, and our solutions have to be ones that are collaborative. So I'm really interested in us addressing these things, addressing public safety in the process, because I am the public safety candidate, because public safety is public health. And it's all of the ways that we support our communities and make sure that we are free to move about the cabin as we need to. And we want to make sure that we're investing in the things that keep our communities safe, and that support our young people, and that reduce violence. And so that's why I'm running for mayor. And that's why I would love to be able to have your support, because this is a people-powered campaign, and we're not taking money from corporate PACs. We're not taking money from fossil fuels. We're not taking money from law enforcement, because we want to be able to balance out the corrupting influences that big money often have in our political decisions, and actually make decisions that benefit the people, because that is what our government is designed to do.
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. Real quick, just to make sure we're super clarified. You're running for mayor. Could you clarify what exactly that entails? Like, what would you be representing?
Yes. So in running for mayor of the city of Sacramento, I represent everyone who lives within the city boundaries of Sacramento. Sacramento has about 500,000 people in it, and it is one of the 7 incorporated cities in the county of Sacramento. So my role would only be for the city of Sacramento, not the entire county, even though they have the same name.
Thank you so much. Okay, and with that, we're going to transition into Q&A. We have about 5 or 6 questions. We may or may not get to all of them. We'll start with the first one, and we ask this of every candidate, as there can be differing strategies here with how people decide to run for office. But are you running to win? And if so, what is your plan to win this race?
Absolutely, I'm running to win, and we are going to win this race because this is a people-powered movement, and because our ideas are popular, and because they're exactly what Sacramento needs. When I look at my platform, I look at some of the city auditors' reports, and how most of the things that we're proposing are things that a good chunk of the population in Sacramento has said they want. So this is not something that's coming out of left field. This is a city that is fairly progressive, in its disposition. If we think about, Bernie Sanders winning the city, getting the plurality of votes in Sacramento in both 2016 and 2020 during the primary. And so I think this is a great opportunity for us to really get the nice things that Sacramento deserves. I am running for mayor because I am frustrated, and my running is born out of that frustration with our leadership not doing some of the things that I think are necessary, and not bringing a systems approach to how our city is run. And so I have lots of ideas born out of my experience on boards, committees, and commissions, my experience working in state and local policy, my experience in public health, and understanding what these challenges are, and also the relationships that I've built along the way. The way that we are constantly looking for solutions instead of doubling down on the problems. And so there are so many opportunities that exist for us, and we are absolutely running to win. And the way we're going to win is we're going to have those conversations at the door. We've already knocked, tens of thousands of doors at this point, and we're going to continue to knock tens of thousands of doors more, because we understand the importance of having those conversations, of connecting with people, and of them having a place in our campaign. And it's also one of the reasons why, after the city auditor's report on language access, we made sure that our website was available in the 5 most spoken languages in Sacramento, which are English, Spanish, Hmong, Vietnamese, and Chinese. Because we understand that we can't have an inclusive government if people can't even access basic information. And I wanted to start with the campaign to show that those are our values. We live by our values, and our values show up in what we do and how we spend our time, and that was important. And so this is the campaign that Sacramento deserves, and we're going to win this thing.
Okay, thank you for your answer. In that answer, you touched on part of our next question, so we'll jump right into that. You are someone who has been outspoken on the topic of municipal budgets and investments in various roles, as a member of the community, as you mentioned, on commissions and committees for the city, and as part of the People's Budget Sacramento campaign. with us in the past, notably something that you led the charge in actually making tangible through the establishment of participatory budgeting pilot at the city. Given all of that, and as you kind of just talked about, if elected mayor, what is your vision for, and how would you approach the city's budget process differently?
That's a great question. So I'm going to answer this broadly and then go directly into the budget. So there are really two things that I want to do in the first 100 days of office. And the first one is to set some priorities for the city. And that priority setting, conversation is one that needs to involve a lot of our partners. And we need to be sitting down and really identifying what we're able to do and how we can go about that. And so that will take the entire 100 days. We may even have to give ourselves a little grace and maybe go out to 150. We're going to set some priorities. And those priorities are going to include some SMART goals. So when it comes time for us to develop our budgets, we'll be able to say, based on the priorities that we've set collectively after this election as this newly elected board for the next, two years that we'll be together before the next election, here are some ways that our staff can then prepare budgets to be able to help us execute the goals that we've set. And so that's incredibly important because you can't have a functional organization without that. And so while that initial conversation about priorities is not necessarily the budget conversation, it will heavily inform the budget conversation and therefore is part of the way that we are going to do some significant outreach and really embed people's voices in the process. And speaking of embedding voices, that is one of the things that's the second thing that I want to do in the first 100 days, which is to transform the way that our boards, committees, and commissions and our decision-making is done. So right now, we do the minimally allowable thing, which is that you post an agenda 5 days before your meeting, and we call that public notice. But that's the minimum that's required, that we could do so much more, and we should, because more is possible. And so what I want to change in something that I've already proposed to the city that they just haven't enacted is doing something more similar to what we have at the state level, which is that our mayor, our city council members, and our department chairs for the city can introduce proposed legislation during a window of time. And then those proposals are organized by topic and posted on the city's website. So you can go and look at them. You don't have to know when it was brought up at a meeting to be able to find it, because right now our organization is by meeting date and not by topic. And so you'll actually be able to go and you could actually sign up to follow along. Hey, I'm interested in climate issues, so I want to follow these proposals and I want to know when things are changing. And then we would refer those proposals to our boards, committees, and commissions, the people who are our volunteer advisors already from the community, so that they can weigh in on the proposals and they can give their feedback and they can say, hey, here's amendments that we think you should take, or here's what the community members who provided public comment to us shared. So that's the first opportunity that people will have to be able to talk about the proposals, and we'll be able to hear and see, and those the outcomes of those conversations will be included in the staff report when it finally comes back to the council for a full vote. And that's a way to be able to create structures so that people have advance notice, so that you have the opportunity for Sunrise and others to be able to sponsor or oppose legislation and let us know why, and so that you have ample time to have the conversations necessary with your elected representatives, so that we are being more intentional about the how, so that we can get the outcomes that are necessary, that are better when more people's voices are involved. Because as I tell everybody, there's nothing I've written in my 41 years of life where my first draft that was only my brain was the best one. And so we certainly should not be passing policy with a less stringent set of, a review process than I have for my Facebook and Instagram posts. We can do better than that. More is possible, literally. So I say all that to say that, when it comes to the budget, that's a similar process. We want to do something similar to what we've done with participatory budgeting, which is getting those ideas for what should we be doing? What should our priorities be? What are some goals? And also asking the question that our government rarely asks, which is, how can you help? Because not everybody in our city is in the position where they need to be funded by the city of Sacramento. Some are in positions where they can be thought partners and leaders and actual implementation partners on the work. And if we build the plan together, we can all play important roles. And so I would like to see us really maximize our efficiency by getting people involved and by respecting the people and the expertise that we have and the lived experience that we have in our community. And that's how we're able to budget together, and that's how we're able to make decisions together, because governance should be a shared value and should be a shared activity.
Okay, thank you. Um, as we were drafting these questions, I guess the cyclical nature of the news cycle in Sacramento is that they become particularly relevant. Um, and so this next question, if elected mayor, not only would you be responsible for representing, as you mentioned, every Sacramentan in the city, but other jurisdictions and agencies will also be looking to your leadership. The broader county of Sacramento has often had tension with the city of Sacramento, and we currently have a district attorney making legal threats of criminal charges over the city council's approach to implementing Measure O and enforcements targeting our unhoused community. As mayor, how would you navigate leading the city and its relationship to Sacramento County on this?
Yeah. As I hate to, I don't hate it. I actually, I have to say I told you so, because when I first heard that our district attorney was suing, hadn't been in office a year and was suing the city, the first thing I thought was, this is to get attention. I didn't know what, but I was like, you must be vying for higher office, which is one of the systemic challenges with Sacramento, is that because we are the state, capital, we have ambitious people here, and nothing against their ambition, but that means that often when people are occupying a role, they are only 20% dedicated to that role and 80% thinking about the next thing they're running for, and using this as a platform to get there. And so it seems very clear to me that our district attorney wants to run for attorney general, and is therefore trying to elevate his profile as a newly elected district attorney, because it makes no sense otherwise why your first step before you are even well into your job is to sue people over things that are partly your responsibility. The county is responsible for mental health services, for providing some housing support, and also for substance use services. And so to sue the city for things that you're actually supposed to be partnering on, when you have a partnership agreement that was just inked slightly before you entered into office last year, it really feels like it's putting the cart before the horse, and that's not the order of operations. And so I am certainly frustrated by the lack of collaboration that we see between these two entities, and it's one of the reasons why I want to do something similar to what I did when I was the chair of the Measure U Commission, which is I want to bring these two entities together. I do not think a JPA is the best opportunity, because a JPA, which is a Joint Powers Authority, essentially gives a few people from different bodies the ability to come together and make some decisions. But those decisions still have to go back to the main bodies and be voted on. And so what happens when you come to a great decision, but then you can't get it passed by your main body? We need to have joint meetings, and joint meetings where all 5 members of the Board of Supervisors and all 9 members of the city council have an agendized meeting several times a year, where there are items of mutual interest that are on that agenda, and where they decide on them and also decide on if there are allocations that are going to go along with them, and what the implementation plan is going to be and what the timeline is going to be. Because if we don't do that, we're not going to make progress. We cannot have a game of telephone being played between the two bodies of governance that we live under. As City of Sacramento residents, some of the things that we need are provided by the county and some are provided by the city. And it is not okay for our governmental parents to be in the equivalent of a really, really terrible divorce and custody battle. The kids are not okay when that happens. And so we need to act like the adults that we have signed up to be as your elected representatives, and let bygones be bygones, and sit down together and work together. And that involves coming together and actually governing together, because that collaboration is essential. And I think it's possible. I think that there are actually cool and level-headed people who exist here. And if we set the personalities and all those things aside and get down to the work, I think we can come up with some good solutions that will work with everyone. Like, this doesn't have to be somebody loses and somebody wins. We can actually all win as people who live here by having a system that works for all of us. And right now, nobody is winning when we have 10,000 people sleeping on our streets, and with seemingly no relief coming in. And we need to be held accountable. And the best way to be able to hold us accountable and to collaborate is to work together.
Okay, thank you. Our next question. So before transitioning to your role on the Measure U Community Advisory Committee, you temporarily served on the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change, which was tasked with laying out a roadmap for achieving carbon neutrality in our region. Now, a few years down the line, investments implementing those strategies outlined in the Commission's 2021 report are few, and also out of sync with the urgency of the city's 2019 climate emergency declaration. What are your thoughts on our current mayor's comments and general approach that money for climate priorities is not going to be found in the general fund? Instead, he's deferring to the ballot as a way to raise funds for climate priorities. And what, if any, alternative methods would you pursue to invest in addressing climate?
Yeah, this is challenging because, in principle, I'm not opposed to, to going to the ballot and asking people for money, because sometimes more money really is needed, right? I mean, it's the same question of like, you can't budget your way out of not having enough money, at a personal level and at a governmental level. But I also have questions about the efficiency of our existing budgets, because I see money being spent in ways that I don't know is yielding the outcomes we need or is the most pressing issue of the day. And so what I would first want to do is go back. We paid several $100,000 to management partners back a few years ago in 2020, and they came up with 39 process and efficiency recommendations for us to help us streamline, to help us address some of the looming challenges to our fiscal forecast. And I have not seen the city actually implement any of them to my knowledge. So I would like to go back and look at the thing we already paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for and say, what of these things is possible for us to be able to implement so that we can better regulate? I know one of them is looking at some of the overtime that we have and some of the staffing and being able to streamline that to be more efficient. I know one of the key considerations when it comes to our budget right now is lawsuits that we've had to pay out for police misconduct, and so we need to be, and also our city's credit rating has declined, which means that our rates have gone up, which means we're spending more money for the same thing because we have staff who have acted inappropriately. And so I am incredibly concerned about the fiscal forecast for our city, and I want to start there. I also think this is where having goals comes into play, because if we say, okay, what part of our climate action plan are we implementing this year and how much is that going to cost, then we can look at our federal and our state and even other local dollars, and we can think about how do we put together a budget to be able to address the most pressing things we need with the urgency that we need. But I share the concerns about urgency. This is an urgent matter. All the other things that are on my platform, if we don't address the climate, we won't have a planet to worry about, and to worry about public safety or housing and homelessness. We will all no longer exist. And so the future of our species is at risk. And so we need to take this incredibly seriously, because it is a rapidly, deteriorating prospect for us to be able to actually get this to a place where we don't lose significant portions of our population and the habitability of our planet. So I am interested in, again, setting those goals, identifying the resources that we can apply to them. And I'm not at a place yet where I feel confident saying we can't find the money in the general fund. I think we need to have an entire budget realignment conversation about what our priorities are, about what we're going to streamline, about where we can get cost savings, and about where we can get revenue. Because I am concerned about going to voters and asking them for more money when we didn't spend the Measure U money the way that we promised. I think that we need to build some trust first before we have our hand out again to ask for money. So again, not opposed to it, but just concerned about, people's trust. And also, is that the first place to start is we need more money. Could we realign some things first?
Okay, thank you. We have another budget question, but I think we're going to jump. We've talked about that a bit, and we're coming close on time. So our next question that we're going to go with, so gentrification and housing affordability is a major and growing concern in Sacramento. While initiatives such as the Sacramento Investment Without Displacement platform for a community benefits agreement, the Sacramento Community Land Trust, and the recently launched Sacramento Forward proposal all seek to touch parts of this issue. What are your thoughts on addressing this as mayor, and which, if any, of these existing efforts do you support?
I support all of them, and I am a signatory on Sacramento Forward. So my name is on the website. If you go, it's been updated. I also strongly support Sacramento Investment Without Displacement. Those are allies and partners to my work in my day job, as well as something that I want to continue to support. I really strongly believe that we should have community benefits agreements for projects that are coming in that can significantly challenge the folks who exist in the space. Because what often happens is that when there are new development projects, they sometimes are even intended to serve the people who live in a community, but they also make that community much more attractive to outsiders who then are able to come in with more money and resources. And then the landscape changes for the people who exist there, and they're not there anymore to be able to enjoy those beautiful bike lanes we put in for them to be able to commute to their jobs, or the streetlights we put in to be able to improve public safety. And by the time all of the development is finished, they have been displaced and they're not able to be a part of the bright future that we built for this community. And so that's incredibly important to me, is that we invest without displacing people. And that's why I think Sacramento Investment Without Displacement is both incredibly well named as well as well intentioned and doing really important work. And certainly also the Sacramento Land Trust. And I also want to add, Sacramento Act and other, community partners have been pushing for a public bank in Sacramento. North Dakota is the only place that actually has one. And essentially a public bank, helps to save us and streamline, when it comes to our finances as well, because all of the interest rates and other things that are being paid in are reinvested in the community. And so you're able to do more with the same sort of pot of money, as opposed to having private investors benefiting from the interest rates and from the other, products that are involved in banking. So I am supportive of that proposal as well. I know it would take a few years to be able to get up and running, but I think those are some ways to be able to ensure that the future for Sacramento is bright, and that we're really thinking about the ways that we can reinvest in the communities that we have and protect the people who are here. And I'm also really interested in making sure that when we talk about affordable housing, we're not talking about it in a binary where it's like, if you're below this income, it's affordable and everybody else is market rate. If we do it that way, we're going to end up with a lot of people who are overburdened by the cost of housing because they're spending too much. And so we need to have some sliding scale so that as your income goes up, you're not just thrown to the market and letting the market decide that you should be unhoused. Instead, we should be letting, our market decide that you now can afford to pay a little bit more in, but you're staying within 30 or 35% of your monthly income.
Okay, thank you. And just say as we move on to finishing, I know the Sacramento Climate Coalition has been in active conversations with the city about that public bank proposal.
Yes.
Yeah, we are going to go ahead and move to closing. I'll give you maybe a final 30, 45 seconds for a final pitch, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I am, as I've mentioned, this is all hard work for me. I really believe that the people in Sacramento are ready for new leadership and are ready to be able to have somebody who, is in this role, who hasn't already been elected and overseen our homelessness numbers increasing and overseeing our inaction on climate change. It's somebody who really is going to be a champion of these issues and is going to push for them, and someone who's committing up front that I'm not going to be in this role for forever, because leadership should be distributed, and that there are some ways that we should be able to invest, and then we should pass the baton on so that we can continue to have a robust cadre of leaders who don't burn out, who don't become, deeply entrenched in the way things are and see this as a job, but are really thirsty to be able to make that change that's necessary, are able to govern really well, and are able to bring more communities in, because more voices need to be at the table when we're making decisions. We are an incredibly integrated and diverse community, and our leadership should reflect that. Our leadership should be diverse and integrated and ever evolving, and that's what I want to help us build as a city, and that's why I'd love to be able to have your support. And because, again, I have to mention, because I'm not taking corporate PAC money and other things like that, campaign contributions are always helpful. If you choose, to support me, I would love to be able to have Sunrise's support. And, as we are moving on, the ability to knock doors and get involved in the campaign and just really build, because this doesn't end after the election. That's actually when it just begins. We are going to loom large, and this is a people-powered movement, and we are running for mayor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you again for your time and for your answer. Generally, we're going to go ahead and conclude here. process-wise, for your information, for folks watching the recording, we at Sunrise will have an internal 48-hour vote, and then we'll announce publicly whether or not we decide to endorse. Okay, with that, I'll leave you to the rest of your evening. Thanks.
Thank you.